Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. Today we're looking at the primary Weapon Systems Mk116 Mod 2, except this time we're looking at it in 7.62x39. We did a previous video on the Mk116 Mod 2 chambered in 5.56mm, and we can see that upper receiver right here. This is basically the exact same rifle as the 5.56, but in 7.62x39. These are both Mark IIs. And what Mark II basically means is you have a lightweight upper and lower receiver. You also have the ambidextrous features. On the Mk116 Mod 1, you will have more of a standard mil-spec type upper receiver, lower receiver that has all those features. Well, the Mod 2 gives you an integral trigger guard. Also gives you a updated mil-spec type trigger that has a nickel boron type finish on it, which is manufactured by BCM. We have ambidextrous safety. We have an ambidextrous bolt release, magazine release. We have a flare beveled magazine well. And when we look at the opposite side, you'll see we have the standard ping pong paddle bolt release on the left-hand side and an ambidextrous magazine release. But you can also see we have a much slimmer profile, and we have material that's removed to decrease weight. We also have on here the BCM gunfighter pistol grip and stock. 6-position stock. The video on the Mk116 Mod 2 5.56 is very, very detailed. We'll give you the link for that one. I'm going to go through more of that stuff, but it's more brief on this model and give you more of what's specific to the 7.62x39. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the front. Now the barrel that we have on here is a 16-inch 416 stainless steel barrel. This is a salt bath nitride finish on it. Now we do have a 5R rifling on here, 1 10-inch twist. This particular one here is the Triad 2 flash suppressor on here, which works much more as a muzzle brake. You'll see that we do have flutes on here, open flutes like a bird cage, but solid ones as well, which basically will decrease your recoil, decrease your muzzle flip. Now we have a 15-inch what they call PIC mod rail. PIC mod basically means is we have pieces of Picatinny rail, which I do not like to use the term Picatinny because it's incorrect, but that's what they call it, is PIC mod. We have mil-standard 1913 rails on the front, on the bottom, small sections, continuous 1913 rail from the front all the way to the rear, but now we have M-LOK sections on the sides and on the bottom. We have the Magpul M-LOK rail segments on here, which gives you a much better feel for as far as when you're not using the mil-standard 1913 rail. Something good to grip onto. Also protects everything. These can be removed, and you can place sections of a 1913 rail in any of these slots as you see here. We have a fully adjustable gas system with 3 positions. The first position is for standard ammunition, unsuppressed use. The second one is for if you were to have more of a full powered type 7.62x39 Wolf or some of the American made ones, which is a full powered load that will reduce some of that back pressure in, so you don't drive the gun as hard as it needs to be. The third position is if you're using some underpowered ammunition suppressed. That would be like Gecko or like some of the Monarch or some of the Tula, where you have a lower port pressure and you need more gas there to even make it work with the suppress setting. And then you generally have an X setting on there as well as for disassembly. This system doesn't necessarily need to be assembled too often because, as you'll see when it comes apart, it's a long stroke piston. So most of the cleaning is just done on the operating rod piston itself. The sights that I have on here are the M-Bus Pro by Magpul. These are probably some of the nicest nicest iron sights that I have. They're low profile. I'm quite fond of them. Now when we get into the upper receivers, you can see we have a fire cartridge case deflector, but no forward assist. No forward assist. As I said, I'm a firm, adamant proponent of the forward assist. I don't believe that it's necessary. I'm glad to see that they omitted it. It was not necessary. But you see how we have a very unique architecture to this, and that's basically because they've removed material to decrease weight. The charging handle we have on here is the Radiant Arms Raptor. This is probably one of the nicest charging handles that are out there, so you can grab on either the right or left hand side. It doesn't do much for gas reduction or for getting gas in your face, but it's extremely effective for as far as having to pull on either side. Again, lower receiver, we're looking at the ambidextrous safety. We're looking at the ambidextrous bolt release. Now, this is a bolt release, not a bolt catch. If you want to lock it open manually, you have to depress the lower portion of the ping pong paddle on the left-hand side. This is strictly a release. So we're going to take this apart because there's a few things we want to go over here. Because this is very unique in the fact that it's a long stroke piston. In my career, I think I've only come across one other long stroke piston AR, and that was the Adcore Bear, and that was chambered in 7.62x39. But if memory serves me right, it was only prototypes. I don't believe that Adcore ever sold any of those. but that was the only other long stroke 7.62x39 AR that I've ever seen. So we'll remove the magazine. Now I want to talk about the magazine a little bit too. One of the keys to making this system work is the magazine. Pretty much all the 7.62x39 ARs always work properly, but the problem was feeding. Now for this one, these come with the ASC magazines, Advanced Storage Component magazines. Now I have to say in my testing that I've done, and I've done a lot of it recently, I've not had a lot of luck with the ASC magazines with failures to feed. However, what we see here is the Duramag by C Products Defense. I have found this is the most reliable 7.62x39 magazine on the face of the earth. This along with the D&H Tactical. So these are the magazines that I use. So again, this came with the ASC. I prefer to go with the C Products Defense. Now first off, you want to take a look at the bolt catch. As we can see, this is a bolt release only here. Now the trigger, as I said, is a mil-spec. It's a BCM. It is a standard mil-spec with a nickel boron type finish on it. Gives you a little bit slicker of a feel to it. Now what I want to pay attention to here is the receiver extension and the buffer. Now the buffer that's used in this is a H2 buffer. Now the H2 buffer is used in both the 5.56 as well as the 7.62x39 semi-automatic only rifles. These are designed specifically by Primary Weapon Systems, and it utilizes a steel body. So you have a steel body with your weights in the inside, H2. Now, talking to Primary Weapon Systems, if you were to use this in a selective fire, you would need to go to an H3. Now, we have a high-speed video that basically shows, even with the H2, the way the system is gassed in 5.56, we can see bolt carrier bounce. And the bolt carrier bounce is not necessarily an issue with semi-automatic only, but it is with fully automatic. So they recommend that if you're going to fire fully automatic, that you go with their H3 standard spring. Now, this is what I wanted to discuss. Now, we all talk about carrier tilt, which basically is when you have an operating rod that strikes a carrier and an M16 AR-15 type platform. It causes it to tilt, and the ass end of the rear digs into the receiver extension, causing damage. This is totally eliminated by the Primary Weapon Systems designed receiver extension. As you can see here, the receiver extension extends forward to that of where the buffer retainer pin is. What that means is when the receiver is closed, instead of the bolt carrier having to jump into the receiver extension, as soon as the receiver is closed with this receiver extension, the bolt carrier is already in the receiver extension, so there is no tilting. There's no jumping. So basically, you're eliminating any type of a potential for a carrier tilt because it's maintaining it being straight. Also, utilizing a short stroke tappet, you do have that impact where you're taking it off its fulcrum and it's bending rearward. It's giving you that carrier tilt. The push that you're getting from the long stroke, you pretty much eliminate a lot of that to begin with. So the long stroke eliminates a lot of the carrier tilt issues to begin with. Now, this receiver extension, I certainly would recommend for any external type piston version of 5.56 or 7.62x39 because it does eliminate that carrier tilt damage to the receiver extension. Next thing I want to talk about is the way that the receiver extension is attached. What we have here is a standard type of a receiver extension end plate, which we also have a QD attachment point. The way this is installed is basically as a ratchet rather than the way that the standard one is just held in by the torque ratios. So it's a much nicer system. It's a much more positive system, and also eliminates the need to have any kind of staking that's involved with it. When you look at the receiver extension on the outside, it is lightweight. You can see the flutes that are in here as well. But this is an excellent system that you can get. I recommend it for any type of a rifle where you're using external piston, where you're at risk for carrier tilt. By having that extended forward on the bottom, you eliminate that jump from the receiver into the receiver extension of the bolt carrier. Now we're talking about the upper receiver and the operating system. Before we get into the bolt carrier group mechanism, I do want to explain one of the things that's very unique about the way this vents off gas. The Primary Weapon Systems platform has what they refer to as progressive gas release. Basically, what you have is as the bolt piston, as the bolt carrier moves rearward, as the piston moves rearward, you have three different exhaust ports. Your first gas port is the smallest, gets larger, and then larger. So you have three exhaust ports in a row that bleed off the gas. So it bleeds off gas much more efficiently. You'll see from the photographs that we put in there, which show the progressive gas release, which is a very interesting system. This is only company that I'm aware of that does this. Pretty much everything else has one gas exhaust port, or in the case of like an internal piston, like an M16 or an M4, you'll have 3 exhaust ports, so, 2 on the front of the right side and 1 more towards the rear, where it vents that gas off that's unneeded. So we're going to show how this thing comes apart. You pull the bolt carrier to rearward, you drop everything down. Now here we have the bolt carrier and operating rod. Now you'll see that we have a 2-piece operating rod that's just simply rotated and pulls off. Now, the way this works is depending on the gas system length. This particular one's set up for a mid-length gas system. So you have this intermediate rod right here. If you were to have a shorter pistol length, this would be directly on the end of the gas, directly onto the end of the operating rod here. Or if you were to have a longer gas system like on a 308, you would have a longer piston rod that would attach. You slide the charging handle right off, and here's the system. So as we see, we have the operating rod as part of a carrier key, which is placed on and it's staked in place. We also notice that we have a spring-loaded bolt for disassembly, same as a standard AR-15 M16. Push out our firing pin retaining pin, drop out the firing pin, rotate the cam pin, quarter turn, drop out, and now you have the bolt. And as you see, the bolt here is not a standard AR-15 M16 bolt. Obviously, it's very similar towards the locking lugs. And you see you have our spring right here. Now, one of the issues that we discuss a lot with 7.62x39 is the durability. Now, there are many people who claim that the bolt that's used for a 7.62x39, which is normally a 5.56, which is bored out more to accept the rim diameter of the 7.62x39, is less durable than, well, we'll say the CMMG Mutant or the Colt CK901, which obviously, of course, when you're taking a 308 bolt and you're necking it up to a 7.62x39 versus taking a 5.56 and necking it out, so it looks up to 7.62x39. However, when these bolts are properly made, the reliability is quite good. We can see we have our ejector, extractor. I have very minimal experience with the 7.62x39. This is the first one that I've gotten, and I've got probably 200 to 300 rounds through it, and that's hardly a test. And unfortunately, that's due to the lack of ammunition availability at the moment. I would have loved to have put more rounds through this. We may follow up with it at a later date when more ammunition does become available, but I have found absolutely no issue whatsoever with the durability and reliability of this bolt. The bolt and carrier are 9310 stainless steel, and they have a nitride type coating on it, a life coat, which they call it, which is very much of a black finish, durable. Bolt has the same one. Now, those of you guys who have earlier versions of this, it's more of a nickel type color. They switched over to more of a black type color. As you can see, this does have forward assist notches, although there's no forward assist. However, if this is placed into a Mod 1 upper receiver, you would have a forward assist. This being the Mod 2 doesn't require it, so this really serves no purpose. It's not necessary. Reassembly, very, very simple. You drop in our spring, insert bolt into the carrier. Again, we always make sure that we have our extractor facing at 3 o'clock. Drop in our cam pin, quarter turn. Drop in our firing pin, and insert firing pin retaining pin. Now, as you can see from the bottom here, this is a full auto carrier. So you could take this upper receiver assembly, put an H3 buffer, and the full auto lower receiver, drop it on, and you're good to go. To reassemble, you put your operating rod through your charging handle. Reassemble the end of the piston onto the operating rod. Now, there are people who claim that this is this is not a good system for as far as the way it's assembled. I have to say that once I got used to it, I have no problem installing and taking it out without issue. Taking a look at the receiver. These are all serialized. The numbers. All upper receivers are serialized. Ejection port does cover. Fire cartridge case deflector. Machining is just really, really well made. The pick rail is very, very nice as well. Now, I wish that they had a little bit shorter of a rail? Yeah, I do. Again, I tend to like the shorter ones myself, but 6-to-1, that's basically what it comes down to, is what you like. And again, we have another view of the gas valve, and In the ammunition that we tested, as I said, we just had to make sure we had the right settings for it. I did not have the opportunity to test this when suppressed, just due to the effect of, again, lack of ammunition. However, there's many people who have shot these suppressed and they have absolutely no problems at all. These are things that we may very well follow up on at a later date. Now for reassembly, you're going to insert your operating rod. Now you're going to drop down your charging handle. Put your charging handle in position, and then just put the bolt carrier underneath it. With that spring holding the bolt out, it makes it much easier for reassembly. Now lower receiver. Drop on. And there you have it. Now I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this to the range. We're going to put a few magazines through it. Now, of all the models that BWS offers, the 7.62x39 is not offered through normal distribution. 95% of this production goes through Fortress Tactical, so if you're looking to get a 7.62x39, this is where you're going to be getting this one from. Now, for as far as the shooting was concerned, I have to say this is probably one of the most pleasant 7.62x39 in an AR platform I've ever fired. The same thing says true for the 5.56 version too. The recoil is relatively moderate, I think, compared to anything else that's out there in this caliber in an AR platform. The way that it's gassed, the progressive gassing, utilizes what it needs, no more, no less. For as far as ammunition compatibility, one of the difficulties that you have is there is not really a standard 7.62x39 that's available commercially. It's not like a military gun where you have a specific load that's your standard, and you can tune the gun for it, and that's it. If you look at all the ammunition that we have available to us, you look at Wolf, you look at Monarch, you look at Tula, those all have very different specifications. Some are hotter, some are significantly lighter. You have like Gecko, where you have a very accurate round, but it's relatively light in port pressure. And unless you have an AK where you have a full open gas port, it's not going to cycle it. In fact, the only non-AK that I found that will fire the Gecko would be the direct gas KS-47 and the CMMG Mutant. Those are the only ones that I've seen that will fire that Gecko. If you put a can on it, these will all fire the Gecko. So the ammunition does make a difference. Accuracy was what you would expect. This is probably one of the more accurate 7.62x39s that I have fired. Very, very, very pleased with it. But being able to have one rifle, two calibers, is an incredible opportunity. Why would you want a 7.62x39? Well, for instance, if you're a hunter, you want to use your AR. Say you want to use 7.62x39. It's an excellent hunting cartridge. It's very similar to that of the 30-30 Winchester for ballistics. You do have a lot of good ammunition available now for hunting. Of course, well, back in the day, I can't say it anymore. Well, when you had 7.62x39 ammunition, it was so dirt cheap. You had that as a benefit. And you do have those out there who just don't like 5.56. They have to have a 30 caliber, and they like 7.62x39. So you have several different options, for ammunition for this. Now, when we tested this, I put the Vortex optic on here. This is the Vortex PST 1:6:24. This is also a Vortex mount on it. I am quite fond of these optics. They're very, very clear. And you look at a caliber like this, 7.62x39, or the 1:6 is ideal. 1:4. And would be also, you don't have the range that you do with a 7.62x51. This is an ideal optic for this particular rifle in this configuration. Overall, I've done a lot of work with PWS in the past. They do a lot of OEM work for a lot of products that you probably aren't even aware of. They do a lot of machining work for other companies. They do a lot of OEM work. Those of you who are familiar with the BRN 180, that was done by these guys. These guys have done a lot of those types of projects. So you guys have a lot of their products, you might not even know it. But I'm very fond of it. I'm very fond of the Mark II. I do like the lightweight. I do like the Ambient features. It's a very well-balanced rifle, and you definitely do get what you pay for it. You're certainly looking well over $2,000 for one, and of course, these are very, very difficult to find right now. Just looking at the upper receivers right now, you're looking at $1,200 for this upper receiver by itself, let alone the lower receiver. Unfortunately, at this time, everything is very hard to get, but hopefully that will change in the not-too-distant future, where you'll see more become available. But those of you who are looking for a high-end 7.62x39 or even a high-end AR, and you do like the fact that you want an external piston, you don't want the internal piston of the standard AR-15 M16, this is one that's certainly a viable option. There are benefits to having a long stroke over a short stroke, certainly. The carrier tilt issues are very much at minimum. It's probably a little bit easier on a gun as well. However, there's just only a couple companies that have really tackled it, and PWS is the only one who's really ever brought it commercially. We've briefly mentioned that I had seen an Adcore Bear in that caliber, which again was a long stroke piston, but I don't know if they were ever sold. I saw some demonstrated at Adcore when I visited there many, many years ago, but I never saw them for sale. So I hope you all do enjoy this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, even better share, and please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. We are a viewer-funded channel. Thank you very much.